Welcome into CyHawk Talk here on a Sunday. We're rewinding the clock, looking at Saturday and Friday's wins for Iowa and Iowa State. Joining me, as always, is the Cyclones good luck charm himself, Ben Hutchins. First 10-win season is his first season on the beat. So, made the joke earlier in the season. Maybe it's coming to fruition as we get into the final stages of the college football regular season and the early stages of the postseason. Ben, how are you doing today?
It's funny, Ethan. I'm doing really well. I was up till 3:30, 4 a.m. last night, so maybe not as good as I could be doing, but lots of things to write about and a lot of stuff to keep me busy today. Jamie Pollard kind of told me that same thing last night. I caught up with him after the Iowa State win, and he said, "Hey, Oklahoma State's gonna want you back." And I don't know, maybe something about it. Something has felt very Oklahoma State-ish about this Iowa State season in terms of winning a lot of these close games and defensive safeties in big time games like we saw last night. So certainly a season that's kind of felt a little like destiny for the Cyclones.
Maybe the worst play I've seen all year was that safety. I'm not quite sure what you're thinking, retreating that far down the field. What's going through your head as a quarterback if that's what you're doing? I saw him make a couple of those backyard football scramble around kind of plays, but as a coach, that's just got to be like Kleiman had to have been pulling his hair out watching that one back.
I'm sure, especially that deep, kind of in on your own side of the field. Iowa State has athletic defensive linemen. They'll break through the line and then they'll contain you. A lot of these guys we see them break through the line and then lose contain, but the Cyclones were able to keep contain on that play. I'm with you. It was that play changed everything. I thought a big safety got Iowa State the ball back, got momentum back. Only 2 points, but when you win by 8 you feel a lot more comfortable with an 8 point lead than a 6 point lead.
What was your biggest takeaway coming out of that game? We talked about one of the maybe the more head scratching plays or one of the more notable plays, but what was your biggest takeaway coming out of that one?
I think you have to look at the big picture, Ethan. I mean, this game, what was a very Iowa State game. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but they got the fumbles, they got the big plays. So I don't know how much we can draw from this specific game. How many times is K-State going to fumble an option play on the very first play of the game to set Iowa State up in scoring position? It wasn't Iowa State's best offensive game. The offense didn't really do a whole lot outside of those two gift wrapped possessions inside of K-State territory. So I'm not drawing any big conclusions from this game. My big takeaway is where this team was 2 years ago, with the Hunter Decker situation and the gambling, and how Rocco Becht has come in and taken over this team. The senior leadership, Jalen Knoll, Higgins, all the guys on defense who were making big plays today. It's crazy. Matt Campbell said these guys saved our season in a lot of ways. They saved our program with how down it had been and what could have gone wrong with all of the adversity Iowa State's had. So to see them back in the Big 12 championship game for the first time since 2020 with a chance to go win the first conference championship in program history is, I think, the big takeaway.
And we got a little extra discussion for you guys in addition to the playoff-ometer. So we're going to keep it to one takeaway each from each of our games. But I just wanted to remark, I'll have my three burning questions for Iowa football coming out tomorrow morning. And one of the big things that I think is a question is how has Iowa State seemingly surpassed Iowa, right? We all thought, or the Hawkeyes thought that they were going to make the college football playoff. The players said that that was the goal. And here's Iowa State on the doorstep of a playoff bid while I was just kind of like, okay, which of the bowls are we going to at this point? So it almost seems like little brother has maybe surpassed big brother to say that statement as respectfully as possible. I just think that's kind of the state of things. I'm not saying it's like, oh, they're just little brother, but it seems mainly based upon the fact that you've had almost now 6 years with a year of Hunter Deckers in the middle there of just exceptional quarterback play and exceptional quarterback leadership in Iowa State. And I think that's the key to what has allowed Iowa State to realize its full potential under Matt Campbell. Because if you go back, it's like Iowa has still won 7 of the last 10 games against Iowa State. They won the first 5 when Campbell was the head coach. But since 2020, it's 2-2. Like each team has 2 wins. So it's not that Iowa State surpassed Iowa. It's that Iowa and Iowa State are kind of like on an equal playing field now. The gap between the two programs has been significantly narrowed from what it was maybe in the mid 2000s or the early 2010s. So I just think the quarterback play is the key there. What are your thoughts on maybe my opinion there?
I think that's really wise, Ethan, because you look at two coaches who by now are very entrenched in their own respective programs, have been very consistent presence on those sidelines. So that's the same. These teams are both drawing from the same talent pool. They're getting the same players, essentially. So I think even if we were to ask Matt Campbell and Kirk Ferentz what the difference is, they would tell you that I'm only as good of a coach as I have a quarterback, and that just shows how important getting quarterback is right to having success. And Iowa State has undoubtedly gotten the quarterback right.
Looking at the number one takeaway, speaking of quarterbacks, Jackson Stratton gets his second start and second win as an Iowa Hawkeye on Friday over the Huskers, a game that the fan part of me would like to forget. But it was certainly an incredible game to watch from a neutral, unbiased perspective. The big takeaway there is Iowa first half, as bad as they were all year. That was easily the worst half of football I watched the Hawkeyes play this year, and probably the worst half of football I've seen from that team. You know what? I'm gonna save that statement. I was gonna say maybe the worst half I've seen from them since I moved to Iowa, but it was certainly the worst first half that I saw all this year. 20 yards of total offense. Caleb Johnson was 16 of those in 10 carries, so he's not running efficiently. Their superstar back is not running efficiently, but he's still the majority of their 75% of their production is Caleb Johnson. The rest of the team has -3 rushing yards, and then Jackson Stratton 2 of 7 for 7 yards or 8 yards. So it was an incredibly inefficient half of football. They were terrible. They couldn't get anything going. Only had one drive, I think, that wasn't a 3-and-out outside of the drive that ended the first half on one play. So the drive that wasn't a 3-and-out was a 4-play 11-yard drive. So they got a first down and then went 3-and-out basically. So it was just incredibly bad football for one half. And then the second half, as Iowa as they've been all year, just didn't make the mistakes, forced the right turnovers. Special teams was clicking on all cylinders. Boom, they win, score 13 unanswered to beat Nebraska. So as bad as they were all year, and then as Iowa as they were all year, what's the big takeaway from that one?
Is Handshake Gate a big deal, little deal, or no deal in your mind?
Man, that was the talk of the town for probably 12 hours. And then seemingly every rivalry game ended in a fight last night. So I don't think the handshake is as big as a deal as it was maybe 24 hours ago. But
Pepper spray, handshakes, pepper spray. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. There have been because I used to be Nebraska media and I still have a lot of follows in that area. There's kind of an interesting thing going on my For You page on X right now where I'm seeing both arguments and I can kind of understand both sides. Nebraska's been trying to set this culture and this tone of being hard and trying to do like walk the walk in all phases of the game, but I don't know if that was the way to do it. I certainly think that it blew up in their face with the way Jay Higgins talked about how much of a motivating factor that was. So I get both sides of it, and it certainly seems less important after fisticuffs occurred in multiple games yesterday. Moving on, as we were discussing before we started recording, the college football playoff. I dropped a tweet just 30 minutes before we went on air with a couple of facts, and I'll just go ahead and read it off, and then you can tell me your thoughts on my short thread on X. It's also posted to Threads and Blue Sky, though. Fact: Iowa State had an incredible season. I don't think there's any arguing that the first 10-win season in program history is incredible. Fact: ISU belongs in the college football playoff at 10-2. This seems a little bit more like opinion, but I just feel like you got a 10-win team in a Power 4 conference. How do you leave a team like that out? They're probably going to if Iowa State loses in the Big 12 title game, but they shouldn't. Third fact: Iowa State beat Iowa. Like we all saw it, 2019. Kyle Conradi, heroics, hit the long field goal. We were all there. We all saw it. Okay. Final fact: the Hawkeyes never had a strength of schedule below at or below 68th during the entire existence of the Big Ten West. And during the existence of the Big Ten West, their average strength of schedule was 37.7. So I've seen a lot of people discussing trying to, you know, cast a shadow on the best season that Iowa State ever had. And then the rebuttal to that is, well, you guys play in the Big Ten West or played in the Big Ten West, so your schedules were always full of cupcakes. That's not true. I think that the argument on both sides is stupid. Let's just be happy for Iowa State and be happy for every good season that Iowa ever had to be a real right down the middle fence rider here.
I'll respond to one of those points, the one that goes directly most with Iowa State. I think you make a wise distinction. You say Iowa State deserves to probably get in the college football playoff, but won't get put in. The theme maybe of the season on CyHawk Talk has been some Big 12 disrespect. And I do think back to how kind of crazy it would be there. It feels like any of these other years in a 14 playoff, a 10-2 record gets you into the college football rankings top 12. And for whatever reason, maybe we have seen some equalization, some leveling of the playing field in the SEC, where we don't have as many teams, but there's more of those middle ground teams that kind of knock Iowa State in the AP poll like we see today. So it does feel like a lot of sense with a 10-2 record not being in consideration for the college football playoff. But as I sit here today, Sunday, December 1st, I don't believe the Cyclones would get in with a 10-2 record if they missed out on a tiebreaker. I don't believe they would get in if they lose the Big 12 championship game, even though that's not supposed to fall into consideration. We assume a 3-loss SEC team would get in over a 3-loss Big 12 team. And I think however you slice it, it's going to be winning in for the Cyclones.
I don't know how closely the AP poll and the College Football Playoff Committee rankings reflect each other year to year, or even how closely they've reflected each other this year. But if we say if the AP poll and the College Football Playoff poll are ranking are identical this week, let's just say magically they are, there's no way the loser of the Big 12 championship game gets in, regardless of, oh, we can't penalize them if they're not in, right? Because I would say if the AP poll is the committee's rankings, they've built it in, right? They baked in the ability to leave out the Big 12 loser, even though they're not supposed to take the championship games into consideration, because you simply cannot hold a team at 12, give them the last spot in the rankings if they lose a championship game like Arizona State would if they lost, and then putting Iowa State at 16 if they lose. You're under no obligation at that point to pretend like you're not even acknowledging the championship game little asterisks. We're like, well, we're going to pretend like it didn't happen, or we're not going to hold it against them or whatever. You've like absolved yourself of that obligation essentially. So given that argument, I wouldn't be stunned to see Arizona State at like 13, just to make sure that the Big 12 is definitely not in the playoff field until one of them wins. And that would fall in line with how they've been ranking those teams all year. Like 2 weeks ago when SMU was above BYU, even though against each other on the field of battle, BYU won. Like that's just the way that they've been kind of manipulating the rankings all year. So Iowa State deserves to be in there. They belong in the playoff. They had 2 bad games. They bounced back. They're a 10-win team in a Power 4 conference in a championship game that's not supposed to matter. They should be in the championship. If they start the season ranked, they're probably locked into the playoffs right now. Like the playoff-ometer is the lock right now. But we'll find out what the playoff-ometer is right after this. Welcome back to CyHawk Talk. It's time for the playoff-ometer. Ben, the only one participating because no need for a QB spectrum when you're not playing a game. And the playoff-ometer for Iowa ended weeks ago. It feels like ancient history that thing even had a Hawkeye logo next to it. Ben, take it away on your final playoff-ometer of the season.
It could be, because by next Sunday Rewind, we will know if the Cyclones are indeed in the college football playoff. This is the best I've felt about Iowa State's chances to make the playoff, I think, since they were 7-0. It's a coin flip. Iowa State's a 1.5 point favorite. When I looked last night at the opening line of the Big 12 championship game, we've established on the pod already it's going to be a win and in or a lose and out. The two paths are incredible right now for Iowa State because Iowa State could win, go potentially, depending on how things shake out with Boise State, go get a bye and have a bye week in the first ever college football playoff. Or they could lose and go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, like another ho-hum good year. So it's kind of wild when you think about what these two coins, sides of the coin could have in store for the Cyclones. So with that said, no true coin flip is 100%. I can't bring myself to give the Cyclones a lock. So I'm going to keep them at the eyes because when a coin goes in the air, you are watching to see if you called heads or if you called tails. And I think that's exactly what the Cyclones are going to be doing on Saturday against Arizona State.
Now, I made you pick which side of the eyes they were on, but it sounds like we're basically on the line here.
I can't go any more on closer to the lock because this is the best I've felt about Iowa State's chances all year. Maybe if we were to look back, it's a little bit unfair to have a lock on our playoff-ometer next to the eyes. Maybe we need to find a middle ground emoji there, something to reflect a little bit more confidence in the Cyclones. But at this point, I do think they are as close you can possibly be to a lock with knowing that it comes down to a win and in game.
You know, I did some incredible mental gymnastics before we started the show to justify the emojis I had picked 4 weeks ago, and so I can definitely back up my decisions for the graphic at a later date. But yeah. That'll do it for the Sunday Rewind show. Be sure to catch all of Ben's coverage of the Cyclone football team as they gear up for the Big 12 championship game. And you can check out some of my bowl content, and also men's and women's basketball season is happening. So let's forget that the football season even happened at this point, especially the last game. Forget that ever happened. Nebraska and Iowa even play this year? I don't know. But thank you for watching. This has been CyHawk Talk.